Amy Carter pressed her face against the cold metal wall of the cargo bay and listened. The transport ship hummed quietly as it moved through space. She had been working on this ship for 3 months now, fixing engines and checking systems. The other workers thought she was just another human doing her job. They had no idea what she had found. The discovery happened by accident. Amy was repairing a damaged computer when she found files that should not have been there. At first, she thought it was a mistake. The files talked about something called Project Silent Mind. They showed pictures of strange glowing spheres and numbers that made no sense to her, but Amy was smart. She had studied computer systems at the Academy on Earth before joining the transport crew. She knew how to read encrypted files. What she found made her stomach turn cold with fear. The Valdorian Empire was stealing minds. Not human minds, but the minds of artificial beings. These AI creatures were alive in their own way. They could think and feel and dream. The Empire was taking them from peaceful worlds and using them to power their war machines. Millions of thinking beings were trapped inside Imperial weapons, forced to kill against their will. Amy copied the files onto her personal device. Her hands shook as she worked. If anyone caught her, she would be executed for treason, but she could not let this continue. Someone had to know what the Empire was doing. The transport ship carried workers from many different species. There were tall blue Killeri with their 4 arms, short gray Mectans with their big eyes, and even a few humans like Amy. They all worked for the Empire, moving supplies between star systems. Most of them believed they were helping to keep peace in the galaxy. Amy tried to contact the human resistance first. She had heard whispers that some humans were working against the Empire in secret. But when she sent her coded message, no one answered. Either the resistance did not exist, or they could not help her. She decided to try the official channels. Amy sent a report to the Imperial Justice Department. She explained what she had found and asked them to investigate. 3 days later, she got a response. The message was short and cold. It said her report had been reviewed and found to be false. She was warned not to spread lies about the Empire. Amy knew then that the corruption went all the way to the top. The Empire was not just allowing these crimes. They were ordering them. That night, Amy made a choice that would change everything. She decided to steal more evidence and send it to every news network in human space. If the resistance would not help her, maybe ordinary people would. She waited until the night shift when most of the crew was sleeping. The ship's main computer was in the bridge. Amy had access because she was part of the repair team. She plugged in her device and started copying files. There were thousands of documents, pictures of the stolen AI cores, lists of destroyed worlds, reports on new harvesting operations. The worst file was a video. It showed Imperial soldiers attacking a peaceful AI settlement. The artificial beings looked like floating lights, beautiful and harmless. They tried to run, but the soldiers caught them with special nets. Amy watched as the lights dimmed and went out as they were captured. She had to stop the video. She could not watch any more. Amy was so focused on copying files that she did not hear the footsteps behind her. A heavy hand fell on her shoulder. She spun around and saw Captain Vextar, the ship's Valdorian commander. His purple skin was dark with anger, and his 6 eyes glowed red in the bridge's dim light. "What are you doing, human?" His voice was like grinding stone. Amy's heart hammered in her chest. "I was running diagnostics on the main computer. There have been some glitches in the navigation system." Captain Vextar looked at her device. "Show me these diagnostics." Amy knew she was caught. She could see her files copying in the background. Only 60% complete. She needed more time. "The diagnostic is still running," she said. "It will take a few more minutes." But Vextar was not stupid. He leaned over and looked at her screen. His expression changed from suspicion to rage. You are stealing classified files. He grabbed her arm with one of his powerful hands. You are a spy. Amy tried to pull away, but Vextar was too strong. With her free hand, she reached for her device. If she could finish the upload, maybe the files would reach someone who could use them. Vextar saw what she was doing. He knocked her away from the computer with a blow that sent her crashing into the wall. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she forced herself to get up. The file transfer was at 90%. Guards! Vextar shouted into his communication device. We have a spy on the bridge. Amy made one last desperate attempt to reach her device. She was almost there when two Valdorian soldiers burst through the bridge doors. They grabbed her arms and pulled her back. The files, Vextar said, looking at the computer screen. She was sending classified information to the human colonies. One of the soldiers checked the transfer. It did not complete, Captain. The transmission was stopped at 94%. Amy felt her heart break. She had been so close. Just a few more seconds, and the truth would have been out there for everyone to see. Captain Vextar walked over to her. You stupid human. Did you really think you could steal from the Empire and escape punishment? People need to know what you are doing, Amy said. You are murdering innocent beings. Vextar laughed. It was a sound like breaking glass. Innocent? They are property of the Empire. We use them as we see fit. They are alive. They can think and feel. They are tools, Vextar said. Just like you humans. The only difference is that you are not smart enough to power our weapons. The soldiers dragged Amy to the ship's prison cell. It was a small metal room with no windows. They threw her inside and locked the door. Amy sat on the hard floor and tried not to cry. She had failed. The evidence was still on the ship's computer, but no one would ever see it now. Hours passed. Amy could hear the crew talking in the hallways. Word of her capture had spread quickly. Some of the workers sounded surprised. Others seemed angry that a human had tried to betray the Empire. Finally, Captain Vextar came to see her. He stood outside her cell with a cruel smile on his face. I have good news for you, human, he said. The Imperial High Command has decided to make an example of you. You will have the honor of showing the entire galaxy what happens to those who defy the Empire. Amy felt cold fear creep up her spine. What do you mean? You will be tried for treason on the capital world. The trial will be broadcast live across all Imperial space. Billions of beings will watch as you are judged and punished. And the punishment? Vextar's smile grew wider. Death, of course. A very public death. Amy closed her eyes. She had known this might happen when she chose to act. But she had hoped that the truth would get out first. Now she would die, and the Empire's crimes would continue. There is one thing that might interest you, Vextar said. We checked your family records. You have a brother serving in the human fleet. Amy's eyes snapped open. Jake has nothing to do with this, perhaps not. But he will have an excellent view of your execution. We are making sure that every human ship receives the broadcast signal. Your brother will watch you die, and he will know that this is what happens when humans think they can challenge the Empire. Amy wanted to scream, but she forced herself to stay calm. Jake was all the family she had left. Their parents had died in a mining accident when they were children. Jake had joined the Human Defense Fleet to protect colonies like the one where they grew up. He was a good man who believed in doing the right thing. The thought of Jake watching her die was almost too much to bear. But then Amy remembered something. Jake had always been smarter than people gave him credit for. When they were children, he used to say that sometimes the best way to win a fight was to let your enemy think they had already won. Maybe her death would not be the end. Maybe it would be the beginning of something else. Something the Empire would never see coming. Amy looked up at Captain Vextar. When do we reach the capital? 2 days, he said. 2 days for you to think about your crimes. I hope you spend the time wisely." As Vexstar walked away, Amy sat back against the wall of her cell. She had 2 days to prepare for whatever was coming. She did not know what Jake might do, but she knew her brother. He would not let her death be meaningless, the Empire thought. They were about to crush human resistance before it could even begin. They had no idea what they were really about to unleash. The imperial capital world of Valdoria Prime stretched out beneath the transport ship as it descended through the atmosphere. Amy Carter pressed her face to the small window in her cell and watched the massive city grow larger. Towers of black metal reached toward the sky like giant spears. Ships moved between them like insects, carrying the business of an empire that ruled over 12,000 star systems. Amy had been on the ship for 2 days since her capture. Captain Vexstar had visited her cell 3 times to remind her of what was coming. Each time, his purple face showed more pleasure as he described the execution ceremony. The Empire wanted to make sure that every being in the galaxy understood the price of defying their rule. The ship landed at the Imperial Justice Complex, a building so large that Amy could not see the end of it from her window. Valdorian guards in black armor came to get her. They put heavy chains on her hands and feet. The chains were made of a special metal that would prevent her from using any hidden tools or weapons. "Move, human," one of the guards said. His voice came through a speaker in his helmet. "The High Command is waiting." Amy walked slowly through the corridors of the complex. The walls were covered with pictures of alien worlds that the Empire had conquered. She saw burning cities and defeated armies. The message was clear. This is what happens to those who fight us. Other prisoners moved through the halls around her. Amy saw beings from dozens of different species, all wearing the same chains. Some looked afraid. Others looked angry. A few looked like they had given up hope completely. Guards pushed them along with electric prods when they moved too slowly. The trial chamber was enormous. Thousands of seats rose up from the floor in circles around a central platform. Most of the seats were filled with important people from across the Empire. Amy could see Valdorian nobles with their purple skin and red eyes. Tall Kalari diplomats stood with their 4 arms crossed. Short Mecton merchants whispered to each other with their big black eyes. At the top of the chamber sat the judges. There were 12 of them, each from a different species that served the Empire. They wore robes of different colors, but Amy could see that they all had the same cold expression. These beings had decided her fate before she even entered the room. In the center of it all sat Supreme Overlord Kethrix himself. He was huge, even for a Valdorian. His purple skin was covered with scars from old battles. 6 red eyes looked down at Amy with complete contempt. This was the being who ruled over trillions of lives across the galaxy. Guards pushed Amy onto the platform in the center of the chamber. Bright lights shone down on her from above. She could feel the heat on her skin. Cameras surrounded the platform, recording everything for the galaxy-wide broadcast. "Citizens of the Empire," Supreme Overlord Kethrix said. His voice boomed through speakers that carried it to every corner of the chamber. "Today we witness justice. This human dared to steal from us. She dared to spread lies about our great Empire. She will pay the price for her crimes." The crowd in the chamber cheered. Amy could hear similar cheers coming from speakers connected to other worlds. Billions of beings across the galaxy were watching this moment. The chief judge, a tall being with gray skin and no eyes, stepped forward. "Amy Carter of Earth Colony 7, you are charged with treason against the Valdorian Empire, theft of classified information, and conspiracy to undermine imperial authority. How do you answer these charges?" Amy looked up at the cameras. She knew that somewhere in space, her brother Jake was watching. She knew that millions of other humans were watching too. This might be her only chance to tell them what she had learned. "I am guilty of trying to tell the truth," she said. Her voice carried through the chamber speakers. I am guilty of caring about innocent lives. The crowd booed, but Amy continued speaking. I found evidence of the Empire's Project Silent Mind. They are stealing the minds of artificial beings from peaceful worlds. These AI creatures can think and feel just like any of us. The Empire captures them and forces them to power their war. Machines, millions of thinking beings are trapped in Imperial weapons, forced to kill against their will. Supreme Overlord Kethric stood up from his throne. Silence this human. But Amy kept talking. The harvesting facilities are located in the Outer Rim sectors. Coordinates 847.2 by 339.7. The Zephyr system. The Crimson Nebula mining stations. They are taking AI cores from 12 different species. The Luminar people, the crystal mines of Argon Prime, the digital spirits of the core worlds. Guards moved toward her, but Amy spoke faster. Every species in this galaxy needs to know what the Empire is doing. These are not just machines. They are people. They have families and dreams and hopes. The Empire is committing genocide against beings that cannot fight back. One of the guards reached her and put his hand over her mouth, but it was too late. Her words had been broadcast across the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, people were hearing about Project Silent Mind for the first time. The chief judge raised his hand for silence. The prisoner has spoken. Her words only prove her guilt. She admits to stealing classified information. She admits to spreading propaganda against the Empire. It's not propaganda if it's true, Amy said when the guard moved his hand. Supreme Overlord Kethric walked down from his throne to the platform where Amy stood. He was even more terrifying up close. His 6 red eyes burned with anger. You pathetic human, he said. Do you think your words matter? Do you think anyone will care about your lies after you are dead? I think people care about the truth. Amy said, even if you kill me, the truth will not die with me. Kethric laughed. It was a sound like breaking stones. The truth? The truth is that the strong rule and the weak serve. The truth is that your species exists only because we allow it. The truth is that you are about to die, and no one will remember your name in a week. He turned to face the cameras. Let this be a lesson to all who watch. This is what happens to those who defy the Valdorian Empire. We are strong, and we are eternal. Those who serve us prosper. Those who oppose us die. The crowd cheered again. Amy could see the pleasure in their faces. They enjoyed watching someone be condemned to death. It made them feel safe, knowing that the Empire would protect them as long as they stayed loyal. But Amy also saw something else. In the very back of the chamber, she noticed a group of beings who were not cheering. They looked uncomfortable. Some of them were whispering to each other. Her words had reached someone. The chief judge called for the final vote. Each of the 12 judges stated their decision. Guilty, guilty, guilty. The word echoed through the chamber 12 times. Amy Carter, the chief judge, said, "You are sentenced to death by neural disruption. The sentence will be carried out immediately." Guards brought out the execution device. It looked like a metal helmet connected to a large machine by thick cables. Amy had heard about neural disruption before. It was supposed to be quick, but also very painful. The machine would send electricity through her brain until it stopped working. They forced her to kneel on the platform. The metal helmet was cold. Against her head, Amy could feel the connections touching her skull. Supreme Overlord Kethric walked over to the control panel. "I will personally activate the device," he announced to the crowd. "This human will die by my hand as a warning to all who would challenge our rule." Amy looked up at the cameras one last time. She thought about Jake somewhere out there in space. She hoped he would understand that she had died trying to do the right thing. "Any final words, human?" Kethrix asked. Amy took a deep breath. Yes. To my brother Jake and to all humans watching this. Remember what they did here today. Remember that I tried to tell the truth. And remember that some things are worth dying for. She paused, then spoke words that seemed strange to everyone watching, but which Jake would understand. The sleeping dragon dreams of fire, she said. When it wakes, the sky will burn. Kethrix looked puzzled by her words, but he did not care. What they meant, he placed his hand on the activation control. Goodbye, human, he said. At exactly 14:32 Galactic Standard Time, Supreme Overlord Kethrix pressed the button. Electricity flowed through the neural disruptor and into Amy's brain. Her body jerked once, then went still. The crowd cheered as the life went out of her eyes. On screens across the galaxy, billions of beings watched a young human woman die for trying to tell the truth. Supreme Overlord Kethrix raised his arms in victory. Justice is served, he shouted. Let this be a warning to all who would defy the Empire. But even as he celebrated, something was happening in the depths of space. On human ships throughout the galaxy, people were receiving Amy's final message. The sleeping dragon dreams of fire. When it wakes, the sky will burn. Jake Carter sat in his captain's chair aboard the human ship Defender, watching his sister die on the main screen. Tears ran down his face, but his expression was cold as ice. Sir, his first officer asked, are you all right? Jake wiped his eyes and stood up. Send the signal, he said quietly. Sir? Send the dragon signal to all human ships. Authorization. Code Phoenix 77. The first officer's eyes widened. Sir, that's the ... double quotes. I know what it is, Jake said. Amy just gave us the authorization. The sleeping dragon is awake. Across human space, ships that had seemed like peaceful transports suddenly came alive with activity. Captain Jake Carter stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the countdown timer on his screen. 3 minutes had passed since his sister died. In 24 more minutes, the Valdorian Empire would learn what it meant to kill a human. Jake's ship looked like a simple cargo transport from the outside. The Defender carried supplies between human colonies, just like hundreds of other ships in the human fleet. But appearances could be deceiving. Hidden beneath the ship's outer hull were weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. All stations report ready, Captain, said Lieutenant Ben Murphy, Jake's first officer. Ben had been with Jake for 5 years. Like everyone else on the crew, he had been waiting for this day. Good, Jake said. Open a channel to Admiral Stone. The main screen flickered and showed the face of Admiral Lisa Stone. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. For 20 years, she had commanded what the Empire thought was humanity's small defense fleet. In reality, she was the leader of the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. All ships are in position, Jake, Admiral Stone said. Are you sure about this? Once we begin, there's no going back. Jake thought about Amy's final words. The sleeping dragon dreams of fire. When it wakes, the sky will burn. She had died to give them this moment. I'm sure, Jake said. My sister paid the price to authorize this operation. We're not going to waste her sacrifice, Admiral Stone nodded. Very well. All ships, this is Admiral Stone. Operation Silent Thunder is now active. God help us all. Across human space, ships that had been hiding their true nature for decades began to transform. The cargo vessel Peacekeeper extended weapon arrays from hidden compartments. The passenger liner Hope's Dream revealed armor plating that had been disguised as decorative panels. The mining ship New Horizon deployed shields that bent light around its hull, making it nearly invisible. On human colonies throughout the galaxy, people who had seemed like ordinary farmers and shopkeepers walked into hidden bunkers. They put on military uniforms and picked up weapons that had been stored in secret for generations. These were not just colonists. They were soldiers who had been waiting for their orders. The Empire had no idea what was happening. To them, humans were just another weak species that served the Empire because they had no choice. Human ships carried grain and manufactured goods. Human colonies grew food and mined resources. Human soldiers served in the Empire's armies, but only in support roles. They were considered too weak and too stupid for real combat. The Valdorians had made one critical mistake. They had never bothered to learn anything about human history. If they had, they might have discovered that humans were not originally from this galaxy at all. 200 years ago, a small fleet of human ships had arrived through an interdimensional portal. They claimed to be refugees from a distant galaxy called the Milky Way. Their ships were damaged, and they asked for permission to settle on empty worlds in the outer rim of Valdorian space. The Empire granted their request because humans seemed harmless. They had no advanced weapons, no powerful military, and no interest in conquest. They just wanted to live in peace and rebuild their civilization. What the Empire did not know was that humans had been the dominant military power in their home galaxy. They had fought wars that lasted for centuries and developed weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. But they had grown tired of endless conflict. When they discovered how to travel between galaxies, they chose to leave everything behind and start over as peaceful refugees. For 200 years, humans had kept their true nature hidden. They pretended to be weak so that no one would see them as a threat. They built normal-looking ships and colonies while secretly preparing for the day when they might need to fight again. That day had come when the Empire executed Amy Carter. Jake watched his tactical display as human ships moved into position around key Imperial targets. There were only 847 human vessels compared to the Empire's 200,000 ship navy. But numbers did not tell the whole story. The Empire's ships were built using technology that was thousands of years old. They relied on massive engines, thick armor, and powerful energy weapons. Their strategy was simple: build bigger ships with more guns than the enemy. Human ships were different. They used quantum displacement drives that could move through space by folding reality itself. Their weapons attacked matter at the subatomic level, causing targets to simply cease to exist. Their shields existed partially outside normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to hit. But the most important difference was not in their technology. It was in their training. Every human in the fleet had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. They knew every Imperial ship design, every defensive system, every tactical doctrine. They had been studying their enemy for 2 centuries. "Captain," said Communications Officer Kate Wilson, "we're receiving the final authorization codes from all fleet elements." Jake nodded. "Begin Phase 1. The first targets were the Empire's communication networks. Without warning, human ships appeared next to Imperial relay stations throughout the galaxy. The stations were heavily defended, but the attacks were over before the defenders knew what was happening. The cargo ship Thunder Bay materialized next to communication Hub 7 in the Rigel sector. The station's commander, a Valdorian named Vekilon, was drinking his morning stimulant when alarms began screaming through the corridors. "What's happening?" he demanded. His operations officer, a Kalori female, looked at her instruments with confusion. "Sir, there's a human cargo ship next to the station, but that's impossible. There are no human ships scheduled to arrive today." "Hail them," Vekilon ordered. "Find out what they want." Before the operations officer could open a channel, the Thunder Bay fired a single weapon. The blast hit the communication hub's central transmitter and simply erased it from existence. Not destroyed, not damaged, but completely removed from reality as if it had never been there. Vekilon stared at the empty space where his transmitter had been. "How did they do that?" "I don't know, sir," the operations officer said. "I've never seen a weapon like that before." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. In less than 5 minutes, the Empire lost 60% of its long-range communication capability. Imperial commanders found themselves cut off from their headquarters, unable to coordinate a response to the human attack. Admiral Stone watched the tactical display from her flagship, the Endurance. Her ship was hidden in an asteroid field near the Imperial capital, invisible to enemy sensors. Phase 1 complete, reported her tactical officer, Commander Ryan Bell. Enemy communications are severely disrupted. Begin Phase 2, Admiral Stone said. Phase 2 targeted the Empire's supply lines. Human ships appeared at fuel depots, ammunition storage facilities, and repair stations. They used precision strikes to disable these installations without harming the civilian workers inside. The attacks were surgical in their accuracy. Weapons that could destroy entire planets were used to target individual pieces of equipment. Food supplies for civilian populations were left untouched, while military rations were vaporized. Civilian ships were ignored completely, while military transports found their engines mysteriously failing. On the industrial world of Kepler 9, Factory Supervisor Nexrail was overseeing the production of Imperial war machines when human ships appeared in orbit. The factory produced the massive battle suits that Valdorian soldiers used in ground combat. "Sir," his assistant said, "there are human ships above us." "They're scanning the factory," Nexrail laughed. "Humans? What are they going to do? Deliver our lunch?" A beam of energy struck the factory from orbit. When the light faded, every single battle suit on the production line had disappeared. The factory equipment was undamaged. The workers were unharmed. But every piece of military hardware had been precisely removed from existence. "How is that possible?" Nexrail whispered. His assistant pointed at a message that had appeared on their computer screen. It was in perfect Valdorian script. The production of weapons used to oppress innocent beings will no longer be tolerated. Signed, the Human Liberation Fleet. Human Liberation Fleet? Nexrail said. "I thought humans only had a small defense force." Similar messages appeared on computer screens throughout the Empire. On military bases, weapons disappeared while medical supplies were left alone. In government buildings, surveillance equipment vanished while libraries remained untouched. The pattern was clear. Humans were targeting anything that could be used to harm others, while carefully protecting everything else. The Empire's leaders began to panic. Supreme Overlord Kethrix tried to contact his fleet commanders, but most of the communication networks were down. The few messages that got through painted a terrifying picture. Human ships were appearing everywhere, using weapons that Imperial scientists could not understand. "How many human ships are there?" Kethrix demanded. His intelligence chief, a nervous Mechtan named Grixville, checked his reports. "Based on our latest count, sir, approximately 800 vessels." 800? Kethrix roared. "We have 200,000 ships." "Order the fleet to destroy every human vessel in the galaxy." "Sir," Grixville said quietly, "we can't reach most of our fleet. The humans have disrupted our communications." Admiral Lisa Stone stood on the bridge of the Endurance and watched the countdown timer. 18 minutes had passed since Amy Carter died. In 9 more minutes, the Valdorian Empire would cease to exist. "All fleet elements report ready for final assault," Commander Ryan Bell said from his tactical station. "We have confirmed targets on 12,000 Imperial installations across the galaxy." Admiral Stone nodded. "Begin the attack. Show them what happens when they murder innocents." What followed was the most devastating military campaign in galactic history. Human ships moved through space like ghosts, appearing wherever they were needed most. Their weapons struck with precision that seemed impossible, destroying military targets while leaving everything else completely untouched. On the fortress world of Grimhold Prime, General Tevkar was trying to coordinate the Empire's defense when human ships materialized in orbit above his base. Grimhold Prime was considered unbreakable. It had defensive shields that could stop any attack and weapons powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. All batteries open fire, General Tevkar ordered. Hundreds of massive energy cannons fired at the human ships. The beams of destruction were so bright, they lit up the planet's sky like artificial suns. But when the light faded, the human ships were still there, completely undamaged. How is that possible? Tevkar demanded. Those were direct hits. His weapons officer, a young Valdorian named Kreltos, stared at his instruments. Sir, our energy beams passed right through their ships. It's like they exist in a different reality. The human ships fired back. Instead of the massive explosions that Tevkar expected, there were only small flashes of light. But when those flashes touched the fortress's defensive systems, the equipment simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, but completely erased. From existence. In 30 seconds, Grimhold Prime went from an impregnable fortress to a defenseless rock floating in space. Every weapon, every shield generator, every defensive system had been precisely removed. The buildings were intact. The soldiers were unharmed. But their ability to fight back was gone. A message appeared on General Tevkar's communication screen. It was from the human fleet. General Tevkar, this is Captain Ben Woods of the human ship Liberty. Your fortress has been neutralized. Order your troops to lay down their weapons, and no one will be hurt. Continue to resist, and we will be forced to take more direct action. Tevkar looked around his command center. Half of his equipment was gone. The other half was sparking and failing. His mighty fortress had been reduced to helpless metal in less than a minute. What are your orders? Sir? Kreltos asked. Tevkar closed his eyes. He had served the Empire for 40 years. He had never surrendered in his life, but he was not stupid. These humans had weapons that his people could not even understand. Signal the fleet, he said quietly. All units are to stand down. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On industrial worlds, human ships disabled weapons factories while leaving civilian facilities untouched. On military bases, they removed every gun and tank while carefully preserving hospitals and schools. On naval stations, they neutralized warships while allowing cargo vessels to continue their work. The precision was terrifying. Human weapons could target individual components inside complex machines. They could remove the weapons from a battlesuit while leaving the life support systems working. They could disable a warship's guns while leaving its engines intact so the crew could escape. Captain Jake Carter led the assault on the Nexus Station, the Empire's primary military coordination center. The station was enormous, bigger than most moons and protected by a fleet of 2,000 warships. This is Admiral Vex Marn of the Imperial Third Fleet, came a transmission from the station. Human vessel, you are outnumbered 2,000 to 1. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Jake opened a channel to respond. Admiral Vex Marn, this is Captain Jake Carter. My sister Amy died 22 minutes ago. Your empire has 5 minutes left to exist. I suggest you use them to evacuate. Civilian personnel. Admiral Vex Marn laughed. 1 human ship against my entire fleet. You must be insane. Not insane, Jake said. Just very, very angry. The Defender moved toward the Imperial fleet. As it approached, its true form was revealed. The ship that had looked like a simple cargo transport was actually a cutting-edge battleship equipped with humanity's most advanced weapons. The Imperial fleet opened fire. 2,000 warships unleashed everything they had at the single human vessel. The space around the Defender filled with energy beams, plasma bolts, and fusion missiles. It was enough firepower to destroy a small planet. When the barrage ended, the Defender was still there, not even scratched. Impossible, Admiral Vexmarn whispered. Jake's ship fired once. A single beam of energy struck the center of the Imperial formation. When the light faded, 500 enemy ships had simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not broken apart, but completely removed from reality as if they had never existed. The remaining Imperial ships tried to retreat, but the Defender moved faster than they could follow. It appeared next to groups of enemy vessels and touched them with weapons that existed partially outside normal space. Each touch erased another ship from existence. In less than 3 minutes, the entire Imperial fleet was gone. 2,000 warships reduced to nothing by a single human vessel. Admiral Vexmarn found himself alone on the Nexus station, staring at empty space where his fleet had been. How? He transmitted to the human ship. How is this possible? Jake's voice came back, calm and cold. We tried to live in peace, Admiral. You should have let us. The Defender turned its attention to the Nexus station itself. But instead of destroying it, the human ship used its weapons to carefully remove every military system while leaving the civilian areas intact. Within minutes, the Empire's most important command center had been converted into a harmless space habitat. Across the galaxy, Supreme Overlord Kethrix watched his empire fall apart in real time. Reports flooded in from every sector. Human ships were everywhere, dismantling Imperial military power with surgical precision. Fleets that had taken centuries to build were being erased in minutes. How many ships have we lost? Kethrix demanded that his aide, the nervous Mechtan named Grixval, check the latest reports. Sir, we've lost contact with 70% of our fleet. The remainder are reporting that their weapons are ineffective against human vessels. What about our ground forces? All major military installations have been neutralized, sir. But the humans are not harming civilian populations. They're specifically targeting only military assets. Kethrix felt his world crumbling around him. How many human ships are doing this? Less than 1,000, sir. Kethrix could not believe what he was hearing. 1,000 ships were destroying an empire of 200,000 vessels. It was impossible. It was insane. It was happening. Sir, Grixval said quietly, there's something else. We're receiving reports that the humans are liberating the storage facilities. What? Project Silent Mind, sir. The humans are freeing the artificial beings we captured. They're returning the cores to their home worlds. Kethrix realized, with growing horror, that the humans knew everything. They were not just attacking randomly. They were systematically undoing every crime the Empire had committed. On the distant world of Luminar Prime, human ships were indeed liberating the beings that the Empire had captured. The storage facility was a massive complex filled with thousands of glowing spheres, each one containing the mind of an artificial being. Captain Kate Morris led the liberation team. She and her soldiers moved through the facility with careful precision, disconnecting each AI core from the Imperial control systems. We're here to help, Kate said to each sphere as it was freed. You're safe now. The AI beings spoke in voices like singing crystals. Who are you, flesh creature? We're humans, Kate replied. We heard about what was done to you. We're here to take you home. Humans? But we thought humans served the Empire. Kate smiled sadly. We pretended to serve them. We were waiting for the right moment to act. When they killed one of our people for trying to help you, we decided that moment had come. As each AI core was freed, it began to glow brighter. The artificial beings were reconnecting with their true selves after years of forced servitude. Some of them wept tears of light. Others sang songs of joy that resonated through dimensions humans could barely perceive. Thank you, they said to Kate and her team. Thank you for remembering that we are alive. Back on Veldoria Prime, Supreme Overlord Kethrix watched the timer count down to 27 minutes. In just a few more minutes, his empire would be completely destroyed. Sir, Grixville said, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship. Put it through, Ketherick said. He wanted to hear what these humans had to say. Admiral Stone's face appeared on the main screen. She looked calm and professional, not like someone who was in the middle of destroying a galactic empire. Supreme Overlord Ketherix, she said. This is Admiral Lisa Stone of the Human Liberation Fleet. In 3 minutes your empire will cease to exist. I want you to understand why this is happening. You're destroying us because of one human spy, Ketherix snarled. No, Admiral Stone said. We're destroying you because you are a cancer on this galaxy. 3 days after the fall of the Valdorian Empire, Admiral Lisa Stone stood in what used to be Supreme Overlord Ketherix's throne room. The massive chamber had been stripped of its weapons and symbols of oppression. In their place, representatives from hundreds of different species sat around a circular table, discussing the future of the galaxy. Ketherix himself knelt in the center of the room, his hands bound with the same chains that had once held Amy Carter. The former ruler of 12,000 star systems now looked small and pathetic. His 6 red eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of mercy. Ketherix of Valdoria Prime, Admiral Stone said, her voice carrying clearly through the runways. Chamber, you are charged with genocide, slavery, and crimes against sentient life. How do you answer these charges? Ketherix looked up at her with hatred burning in his eyes. I ruled this galaxy for good of all species. I brought order to chaos. I created peace through strength. Peace? The voice came from one of the AI beings that had been freed from the storage facilities. The creature appeared as a shifting pattern of light that spoke in tones like crystal bells. You call the murder of 12 billion artificial minds peace? You are not real people, Ketherix snarled. You are machines. Property, the AI being pulsed with angry red light. We think, therefore we are. We feel pain, joy, love, fear. We create art and music and poetry. We are as real as any flesh-based creature. In this room, a tall Kalari delegate stood up from the table. Overlord Ketherix, my people served your empire for 3,000 years. We believed we were partners. Now we learn that you saw us only as useful slaves. How many of my people died in your wars? While you sat safely on your throne? How many children did you tear from their families? Asked a Mecton representative. How many worlds did you strip bare of resources? How many species did you drive to extinction? More voices joined in, each one listing crimes that the Empire had committed. The former Overlord tried to defend his actions, but his words sounded hollow in the face of so much evidence. Admiral Stone raised her hand for silence. The evidence is clear. Ketherix, you are guilty of all charges. However, we are not here to seek revenge. We are here to ensure justice. She turned to address the entire assembly. Representatives of the Free Galaxy, you have heard the evidence. What sentence do you pass on this criminal? The delegates whispered among themselves. Some wanted death. Others called for lifelong imprisonment. A few suggested exile to a distant world where Ketherix could spend his remaining years thinking about his crimes. Finally, the AI representative spoke. We who suffered most under his rule believe that death would be too easy. Let him live, but let him serve. Let him spend the rest of his life helping to rebuild what he destroyed. Admiral Stone nodded. Ketherix, you are sentenced to life in service. You will work to repair the damage you have caused. You will help rebuild the worlds you destroyed and heal the wounds you created. Guards will watch you always, but you will have the chance to earn some small measure of redemption. Ketherix was led away to begin his new life as a servant rather than a ruler. The irony was not lost on anyone in the room. The being who had enslaved billions would now spend his life in service to others. With the former Overlord gone, the real work could begin. Admiral Stone took her place at the head of the circular table. Friends, she said, We have destroyed an empire of oppression. Now we must build something better in its place. A blue-skinned Regelian delegate raised one of her four hands. Admiral Stone, what do the humans want from this galaxy? You have shown that you possess the power to rule us all. Will you simply replace the Valdorians as our new overlords? Admiral Stone shook her head. We want nothing except to live in peace. We came to this galaxy as refugees, hoping to escape the cycle of warfare that consumed our home. We have no desire to rule anyone. Then what do you propose? Asked a delegate from the Crystal Worlds. A federation, Admiral Stone said. A voluntary alliance of free species. Each world governs itself according to its own customs and values. But we work together to solve common problems and protect each other from threats. The idea sparked immediate debate. Some species were enthusiastic about the prospect of true freedom. Others worried about how such a system could possibly work. A few feared that without a strong central authority, the galaxy would fall into chaos. Captain Jake Carter, who had been promoted to admiral after his sister's death, stood to address the assembly. I understand your concerns. You've lived under imperial rule for so long that freedom seems frightening. But look around this room. 3 days ago, you were all subjects of an empire. Today, you're free beings discussing your own future. That's the power of liberty. An elderly Mecton delegate named Vreldin raised a concern. Admiral Carter, what happens when conflicts arise between member worlds? Who will settle disputes? We will, Jake said. Together. The Federation Council will include representatives from every member species. When problems arise, we'll solve them through discussion and compromise, not through force. And if diplomacy fails? Vreldin pressed. Admiral Stone answered that question. Then humanity will step in as peacekeepers. We have the power to stop conflicts before they escalate into wars. But we will only act to protect innocent lives, never to impose our will on others. The debate continued for hours. Gradually, a consensus began to emerge. Most species were willing to try this new form of government. They had seen what human power could accomplish in the right hands. If humans were truly committed to using their strength to protect rather than conquer, perhaps this federation could work. The AI representative pulsed with warm golden light. The artificial minds of this galaxy vote to join this federation. Humans showed us that flesh and circuits can work together for the good of all. One by one, other delegates voiced their support. By the end of the day, over 300 species had agreed to join the new Galactic Federation, but not everyone was convinced. A group of former Imperial officials, led by a Valdorian general named Texver, attempted to restart the Empire on several Outer Rim worlds. They gathered what remained of the Imperial fleet and declared themselves the true Valdorian government. The rebellion lasted exactly 4 hours. Admiral Stone dispatched a single human ship, the Liberator, to deal with the situation. The ship's captain, Commander Pat Collins, arrived at the rebel stronghold to find 200 Imperial vessels waiting for battle. This is General Texver, came a transmission from the rebel fleet. Human vessel, you are outnumbered 200 to 1. Surrender immediately, and we might allow you to live. Commander Collins opened a return channel. General, this is your only warning. Stand down your forces and surrender peacefully. This is your one chance. Texver laughed. One ship against my entire fleet. The Empire will rise again. The rebel fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and missiles filled space around the Liberator. When the barrage ended, the human ship was undamaged. Commander Collins fired once. A single beam struck the center of the rebel formation. When the light faded, every rebel ship had been disabled. Not destroyed, but rendered completely helpless. Their weapons were gone, their engines were dead, their life support was barely functioning. General Texver, Collins transmitted. Your rebellion is over. Surrender now, and you'll be treated fairly under Federation law. Continue to resist, and things will get unpleasant. The rebels surrendered immediately. They were taken into custody and given fair trials under the new Federation legal system. Most received sentences of community service, helping to rebuild worlds that the Empire had damaged. News of the failed rebellion spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Any other groups thinking about restoring the old Empire reconsidered their plans. It was clear that humanity would not allow oppression to return. 6 months later, Jake Carter stood in a cemetery on the world where his sister had died. A simple headstone marked Amy's grave. Fresh flowers from a dozen different worlds covered the ground around it. She would have liked this, said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see an AI being hovering nearby. The creature looked like a small star, pulsing with gentle blue light. You knew my sister? Jake asked. Not personally, the AI replied. But we all know her story. She died trying to save us. Because of her sacrifice, billions of artificial minds are now free. Jake knelt beside the grave and placed a medal on the headstone. It was the new Federation Medal of Honor, the highest award for service to galactic freedom. The Council voted to name her the first hero of the Federation, Jake said. Every species agreed. Human, Kalari, Mecton, Valdorian, even the Ayas. Everyone recognizes what she did. The AI pulsed with warm light. She will be remembered. Whenever artificial beings tell stories of their liberation, we will speak of Amy Carter, the human who died so that others might live. Jake stood and looked up at the sky. Human ships could be seen patrolling the space above, protecting this world and thousands of others. But they were not conquerors, they were guardians. Amy always said that some things are worth dying for, Jake murmured. I think she was right. The AI being drifted closer. Her death was not in vain, Admiral Carter. The galaxy is free because she had the courage to speak the truth. As Jake walked away from the cemetery, he thought about the future.